thank you.
Thanks so much for coming down.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to during the strange.
During this time?
The COVID.
Well, I've been doing lots of Zoom meetings. It's been a bit of a change for sure to try and reach out. There's a positive and a negative because the positive is there's an opportunity to reach out to more people, but lots of people are being bombarded with lots of information, and people probably get tired of that bombarding and they just get overwhelmed. Secondly, I think human beings truly want quality and not quantity.
Right.
And even though we're trying to get the connection, human beings are wired for connection, we're trying to get it digitally instead of personally.
I agree with you on that, yeah. It's tough during this time right now.
Right. But having said that, we can still make some really good connections. I did a talk show with a lady in Germany, and there was people from India and people from the States, and so yeah, it was pretty cool.
Just different ways to connect, right? Just
Yeah.
different ways of connecting.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people today are really interested to hear some of your relationship tips and to hear all about your book, His and Hers. His and Hers Greatest Need is the book that Brent will be talking a little bit about with us today. So I'll just hand that to you and just let you go.
Yeah, well, it really starts many, many years ago. Probably in 2003, I wrote 2 circles and stuffed it in my dresser and another piece of paper, and I knew I was going to write at least 2 books, and one was on relationships. And partly because I wanted this amazing relationship that I felt I never had. And when I look back, I didn't realize how selfish I was, but I was looking to be loved instead of looking to love.
Right. It's always easier when we look back.
Oh,
you know, in retrospect,
hindsight is
coulda, shoulda,
20/20.
woulda, that
Exactly.
sort of thing. And it's always the other person's fault. But, you know,
For sure.
until we step back and really have a look at what our part in things are.
And will we learn from it?
Exactly.
Like John Maxwell says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
I like that.
Right? And
Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
And I seem to need a lot of 2x4s to get it
As most
inside
of
the
us
head.
do,
So, yeah. So through my pain comes my passion. I was working in the oil patch, and I've spent 20-some years, and I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And thought I was going to be somebody, so I could find somebody. And I had to become nobody, and I had to lose it all. And so back in 04, I read the book. 05, 06, I started building the business plan. And over time, I raised $20 million. I moved back to Lethbridge. We were in Calgary, and I built the largest manufacturing plant in Canada of its kind, and grew it from 0 to about 130 employees, and got it to about $22 million a year in revenue. And then I got squeezed out by the venture capitalists. But I needed to be broken. I needed to be awoken. I was down here and living life as I shouldn't be living life. I was going through a divorce, a separation, and it just wound up that I wound up losing everything, and I had to truly be broken. And then a few years later, that was a 26-year marriage, I did remarry a few years later to a lady that had been badly beaten by her stepfather every day, and I still needed to work on me and to be healed, and but I did remarry and rushed into it, and she ran away a whole bunch of times, and I was even broken more. I lost everything again. And then I really started to pour out my heart, and I started writing my book and doing tons of research, tons of tears, looking at the mountains every day with my golden retriever, looking up saying, why God, why did you do this? And but for some reason it just started coming, and I started to realize it was shown to me man's greatest need and woman's greatest need, and the single biggest reason why marriages break down. So
that's why we're here. That's the interesting part.
Yeah,
about it, right?
that's
Everybody wants to know. And you know, Brent, it's interesting the way you said, you know, I thought if I became somebody, I'd find somebody.
right.
And I think that's interesting. I think a lot of us, you know, feel that way. When I get here, then I'll get that. Or when if I have the great job with all the money, then I'll find the woman. And I think the truth of it is most of us are not looking for that. You know, that's not high on our list of qualities that we're looking for in a man. And I think you're about to tell us some of the qualities that we look for, or the needs that we have that aren't necessarily fulfilled by money, right?
Absolutely. You know, if you put a dollar sign on top and the heart underneath, that's the wrong order.
Right.
But that's why our world is messed up, because we put the money ahead of the honey. We put the and really when we're seeking money, it's not about the money, it's about what it
brings us.
Right. We think it brings us significance. We think it brings us power and control and all these things. But really, you can put an ELF after the $S, self. And we're putting self ahead of loving others. So when we put the others ahead of ourself, that's when we start. Our whole world's going in the wrong direction. Most of the world is going in the wrong direction. Any dead fish can float downstream, and it takes a live one to swim upstream. So we're so busy trying to get noticed, get heard, be important, be secure, be significant, that we're empty because we're trying to get versus giving. Because what we don't realize, the secret to life is giving.
Right.
Why does it take a high river flood, a Fort McMurray fire, a California fire, Australia fire, a tsunami, a tornado, Haiti, New Orleans? Why does it take a disaster for us to get up off of our selfish couches, go give, expecting nothing in return? But in marriage, it's what you can do for me.
Right. That's so true. And there's a phrase of mine that I've heard that I kind of a love-hate thing, and it's everybody's trying to find the right person, but nobody's trying to be the right person.
That's the
and I think that's so true. And I think another issue is that everybody wants to find that great love, and yet we're so afraid of it. Not all the time, but and myself included at different points in my life. We want that. I think most people, want some type of significant relationship in their life, but yet they're slightly afraid of it.
Absolutely.
To the point of self-sabotage, maybe, or avoidance, or.
Well, and by design, we're attracted to somewhat our opposites, really.
Right.
You just take the male and female anatomy, sender, receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really are completers, not competers. We actually need to come together. But what starts out as an attraction becomes an annoyance. And the reason why it's an annoyance is because we're self-seekers. Get me, hear me, see me. Versus how can I understand you, how can I love you?
Right.
Because love is not self-seeking. The opposite of love is self-seeking, which is actually sin. If we don't want to use the word sin, but sin is self-seeking.
Right.
And love is the opposite of self-seeking. And the reason why our world is largely empty is because we're chasing the me, me, me race versus how can I love you?
Right.
And more importantly, why do I love you? Our design, we were actually made in God's image, and God's a giver, not a taker. So once we're giving, then we're living. Once we're taking, then we're dying.
Right. Got you. So what would you say about, I watched a video of yours earlier this morning, and so what would you have to tell us about healing on a cellular level? It was quite an interesting video that you had.
And I got to give the credit to Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's a world-renowned neuroscientist, cognitive pathologist. Many people in the world are studying the brain more than ever. We realize that we have neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, we have brand new baby nerve cells being born every day, and there's protein synthesis in the brain. There's 80 to 100 billion cells in the brain. And a baby's brain is basically developed after birth, except for heart rate and breathing. It's developed in the womb. So, but after, it's taught. There's nature and nurture. There's
Right.
things passed through the genes. And so parenting, generations gets passed down. We think it's all genetics, but really it's passed through the genes. And then there's 700 to 1,000 trillion cells in the body. When there's love, when there's forgiveness, when there's making amends, support, encouragement, kindness, when there's love, there's healing at the cellular level. 85 to 93%, says Caroline, of our mental and physical illnesses are due to our thought life, which is true.
Right.
Look at all the mental health issues. But here's what she doesn't say, which I add into that. Our thought life is hugely and largely and primarily impacted by our relationship life.
Is that why married people live longer, do you think?
Especially healthy marriages.
Healthy marriages.
Right?
That's the key.
There's a friend of mine, Charlie, she lives in Strathmore, and her parents were 103 and 102.
Wow.
They took his driver's license away at 100. He was the mayor's standard near Strathmore many years ago. And she'd always say, those who pray together stay together.
Right.
And his favorite job in the wheelchair. In the last couple of years, he'd push her around, and he had all his scruples. She had all her scruples. She just couldn't walk. And his favorite job was tucking his wife into bed at night, giving her a kiss goodnight. Because the unity, who doesn't want to see the old man and the old woman, the husband and wife, the wrinkled hands, still holding hands? Because here's the cool part. The very first ingredient and primary ingredient to love is commitment.
Absolutely.
Today, people don't want to be committed. We don't want to stay married, and we don't want to get married. We want a back door. The young kids today are afraid to get married because they think their parents who got divorced, 80% divorce rate between 45 and 65 at our age group,
Right.
and 69% right now are being initiated by women. They're jumping on the bandwagon, the sheeple are falling over the cliff, and their girlfriends will bust up girlfriends' marriages out of empathy. Oh, you go, girl, you don't need to take that.
Yeah.
Be an independent woman.
Yeah.
Who was the first independent woman? Eve. How's that working for her?
Right.
It ain't working. We were designed for dependence on God and dependence on each other. There's no greater team between two human beings. So commitment, if I didn't show today, what would you think of me?
I would have been extremely disappointed.
Right. Why? Because you're wired for commitment. We're wired for promise. When I make a promise, I'm to keep it.
Right.
If I don't keep my promise, if I don't keep my word, and especially men, because the man is the initiator. If I was to ask you to go for a dance, put my arm out, you put your hand in there.
I probably would, yes.
Okay, right? Now, we go for a walk and we come back, and then you ask me, you put your arm out. How's that feel?
It makes me feel like I'm in the lead.
Yeah, but is that what? Would you rather have your hand in here?
Probably not.
You'd rather have your hand here?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Who goes down on one?
This feels more gentle. Like it feels more not so dominant.
Right. If I was to ask you who goes down on one knee to ask to get married,
If you were going to get down on one knee?
of the man and woman, who goes down on one knee?
Well, the man.
Right. Let's play co-captains of the Titanic, okay? Pretend we're co-captains, right?
Okay.
Everybody's ship's going down. Everybody's jumping on lifeboats. There's only one lifeboat left. There's only room for one more person to get on that last lifeboat. We're standing there looking at each other. Who do you think should say, you take the last seat?
You know, I have to admit, I would expect the man to say ladies first.
Why?
I guess I've been conditioned. I would have to say it's conditioning. Or maybe it's because, and maybe this is conditioning too, but, I think as women we're raised to see, men as, protectors somewhat. And
Yes, they are.
yes. And I think this is a good thing.
Because a father instills the femininity into his daughter more than the mother. The father instills the masculinity into his son more than the mother. She wants to look pretty for her dad and go on adventures with her dad.
Right.
She wants to be secure in her dad. Her safety and her security, which is a woman's number one need, is security and safety. She has other needs, but that's her number one way of feeling loved. But
Safety and security.
security is a woman's core need. And a man's core need is significance. Every man wants to be his wife's hero. He might suck at it, but
Right.
he wants to be. But you tell me one woman who doesn't want to be fought for,
Absolutely.
right?
And it's I've heard it before, and I think it's kind of what you're saying is men need to be needed and women need to be cherished. Kind of. Is that somewhat
Yeah,
what
so
you're
the
saying, or-
significance, the man wants to be a hero. There's not one man in the world that doesn't want to be his wife's hero,
Absolutely.
right? And there's not one woman that doesn't want to be fought for. So you tell me that significance is not his core need. He wants to be significant to her. He wants to rescue his princess. He wants to go on an adventure with his princess. Every man wants to go to the moon for his bride, with his bride, and for his bride. Otherwise, he doesn't feel like he has a purpose. His significance is to her. And she, if you check out the anatomy, sender, receiver. She wants to receive that. I was sitting at a men's conference one time. It had nothing to do with the men's conference, and this little voice came into my head, and I believe 100% God asked me, why did God give man and woman? And two words came into my mind. To love. I said, this isn't being taught in the church. They think, oh, he needed a helpmate. Yeah, she's a helpmate. But God's a giver, and he wanted the man to experience love by giving love. And she's the receiver, and then she reflects back the love she receives from him to him. But he's the initiator.
Right.
He takes the lead because he puts her ahead of himself. There's not one woman in the world if he has honesty and kindness and integrity and hard work and perseverance and forgiveness and compassion, and he never quits loving her, not one woman in the world that doesn't want that guy.
Absolutely. I would agree, and I think most of the women watching would agree.
He could be half ugly and she's still going to love him, because she's looking at character. And the reason why she's looking at character, not only for herself, but for the children. He has a higher degree of impact on the character that his daughter and his son have. And we've got too many single parents. We've got too many women say, you go, girl, you don't need a man. I'm going to say God never designed them to be independent of each other. If he wanted just a whole bunch of single men, he would have done it. A whole bunch of single women, he would have done it. He designed them as completers, not competers.
Right.
First, he was made first, she was made last. Which is better, first or last?
First.
Neither.
Neither.
Neither is better. We wouldn't need feminism because the most beautiful of all creation, we marvel at the sunsets and the deep blue seas and the skies and the mountains, but of all creation, the crowning jewel of beauty is woman, inside and out. And you said cherish. Do we cherish this creation? Oh, we're in awe of it. But the greatest beauty of all creation is woman. A man is to cherish her. And when he cherishes her, she blossoms.
And then it gets reciprocated.
Bingo.
When she's cherished, I would imagine she feels safe. And then when you feel safe, you're gonna give it right back.
And the way that, and this is what females don't know, the greatest way you love your wife, food and sex are good. The greatest way you love your husband, food and sex are good. But the greatest way she loves him is she believes in him. If he was going to be her hero, but she belittles him instead of believes in him. He wants to go to the moon for her.
Right.
So when she believes in him, he might only make it halfway, but he wants to go for her, for nobody else. And when he feels insignificant, most men work more, play more, porn more, drink more, gamble more. They're trying to fill the void.
Right.
And when he retreats, men go inside themselves. Now her security is threatened. And when her security is threatened, her fear response is not to retreat. His is fear, false evidence appearing real.
Right.
Her fear response is to attack or reject.
Right.
She's trying to teach him a lesson.
The
Don't you
silent
abandon.
treatment.
Well, don't you abandon me. But it doesn't come out right. She's chucking the frying pan, telling him to get out, so he takes it literally and retreats some more.
Right.
The very thing she doesn't want him to do, she causes him to do.
Exactly.
So then she gets more what she doesn't want, and then he retreats and more and goes around.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy for the woman,
Bingo.
basically, right?
So I say do the opposite. Men, you stay. That's the greatest way you love your wife. You never quit loving her. And wives, you believe in him. Because she's the fuel for his jets.
Right.
She has such powerful, powerful, powerful love. And that's why when she gives herself to her husband and believes in him, it's coming back anyways, because he's doing it for her.
Right.
So we're actually causing ourselves so many problems because we're doing the opposite that we should be. Do me a favor, cross your arms. What arm is on top?
My left.
Okay, I want you to drop them. Reverse it.
That feels awkward.
Right, go back to the normal way. How long have you been doing it the normal way?
All my life, I would
Right.
imagine.
Human beings are creatures of habit, right?
Absolutely, we
Right?
are.
If we had to learn how to walk, eat, and go to the washroom every day, we couldn't function.
Right.
The subconscious, the habitual drives us. There's only two motives, love and selfishness. What you can do for me, or what can I do for you?
Right.
I don't care if you're Christian or non-Christian. If we've been practicing the habit of what you can do for me versus what can I do for you, we got to get to the head and the heart. But if we don't get to the habit, we don't make changes.
That's good, eh? If we
We gotta
don't
get
to
it.
the habit, it's got to become normal for us.
Right. And here's the cool thing about men and women, how we're opposite, generally speaking. To get to a woman's mind, her head, you got to go through her heart.
Absolutely.
But to get to a man's heart, you got to get through his mind. Because men are usually about how. We got to figure it out in the mind.
How it works, why it is this way, why it isn't that way.
That's why I say, guys, you listen to your wife with your eyes and zip your lip. Because most men think, why are we talking unless we're solving a problem? She's going, why are we solving a problem? I just wanted you to listen.
That's so true, that's true.
Right, and here's what females don't know. The problem's not the problem. She wants to know that he cares about how she feels about the problem.
Right. Therefore, why he should just listen.
Right, but he loves solvingly.
He wants to make it right.
Well, he thinks he's loving her by solving a problem
making
for
it right.
her.
Yeah.
But she's saying, well, why don't you care about my feelings? He says, well, why don't we just fix the problem, then we don't have to worry about the feelings.
The feelings.
This
Wouldn't that be nice?
This
If
is
we could
automatic.
just get rid of the
Exactly.
feelings, fix the problem.
And then also physically, men love physically. At 8 weeks old, a boy has a rush of testosterone that hits the brain. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, they're the same. But at 8 weeks, he gets testosterone. So when they're nurturing and playing and talking with mom, usually mom more than dad, because she's nursing and birthing them, they're about the same. But he gets testosterone rush. So that causes his brain to be less about verbal emotional communication and more about action and aggression.
Right.
So when he grows up, the habits are different. That's why she's going, when they're getting married or 20, 25, or 30, well, why doesn't he communicate with me? It's not a habit. He doesn't care.
It's almost unnatural.
It's unnatural.
And we think it's uncaring.
Right,
as
but
women.
here's what I have to share with men. You are the leader, not the dictator. You are the leader in patience. You're the leader in kindness. You're the leader in honesty. You're the leader in compassion. You're the leader in work ethic. You're the leader in forgiveness. You're the leader because you put your wife and your children ahead of you. And that needs to be modeled. But
Which is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just
go
think
ahead.
it's important to say, which is, it's not to be mistaken for you're the leader, and therefore the woman is down here.
Correct. That's
and
the wrong view.
Right, and the key part of what you just said, Brent, is that you lead by putting your family up here first.
Right.
So that's the difference.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Because a woman knows, men like to be preachy. They tell people and they think they're teaching people what they're telling. And women are going, actions speak louder than words.
Right.
She's the gauge of his character. She's looking for her man to be a man of character. She lets him know if he's off track, sometimes with the frying pan. But our fathers didn't teach us, our fathers and mothers. And here's the most important part about parents. The number one impact on a child's life is not parenting. We're trying to fix all our kids with all the parenting, and we're doing a lousy job of that. But more important than parenting is the marriage. The greatest impact on a child is the loving relationship between husband and wife.
That example, right?
That's where they learn what love is.
Right.
And when that's falling apart, if you're a better marriage, you're going to be better parents. You might have a bad marriage and you think you're doing okay at parenting, but you're still sucking at parenting.
Right.
Because the kids are watching. They're copycats.
Exactly. And this could be back to what you were saying, why so many of the younger people are afraid to get married.
Yeah.
It's not going to work anyway.
Right.
You know, you hear it. You know,
And we're destroying
60% of
humanity.
marriages end in divorce. Why would I bother doing that?
Exactly.
Or they go into it with the idea that, you know, I'll just get out if I don't like it.
Right.
I'll just quit when things get bad.
And where's the commitment?
Exactly. Yeah.
So because of our cells, because our cells are actually wired for love, if we don't have commitment, our cells in our body, in our brain and our body, are actually withering away. If we don't have connection and we don't have commitment, that 103 and 102-year-old couple, wow, the roses grow better through the manure together.
Right.
Right? It's only the pain that causes us to figure out how to get off of our selfish selves and to do forgiveness and to do patience. We're not going to volunteer for it. It's a bit of a struggle process because we're rooted in this self-seeking bend. But until we learn that, at least until we get into a better habit, that we actually need to do the opposite.
Right. And to understand, too, that love is not just a feeling, it's a decision.
Totally. Right feelings come from right decisions.
Right. Not the other way around.
Not the other way
I've done
around.
my homework.
Exactly. And our society thinks, well, just follow your heart. And especially ladies, because they're heart-driven more than they are mind-driven. They're mind-driven, but first the heart.
It just sounds more romantic to us, I think, to follow your heart than to follow your mind.
And you mentioned a beautiful word, romantic. A man, I'm going to say this right out, God is a romancer. He designed a man to romance his wife. And he designed a wife to be romanced by her husband. It's beautiful.
It is.
That's why I say, men, do you know you're the initiator? You're the sender? She needs to receive it. One time I was eating cereal, and I sniffed, and the cereal went down my windpipe. What do you think I did?
Choked.
Right. And then I coughed it up.
Right.
Why?
To keep breathing, I would imagine.
Because food doesn't go down windpipe. Food goes down esophagus. Why?
Because that's the way we're built.
That's bingo. There's a design. Because there's a designer.
There's a design, yeah.
I don't walk on my ears, and I don't listen with my toes. The engine don't tell the engineer. The pot doesn't tell the potter. The art doesn't tell the artist. The creator doesn't tell the creator. We get to cherish, not change. We get to discover, not debate. When we start living in the way that we're designed, we start to come alive. When we start trying to flip it upside down, no commitment, we don't live right. And that's why our world is largely hurting. We are starving. And the screen between the human being is dividing us.
Right.
Love's about unity. Selfishness is about division. And whether it's the screen or anything else that divides us is causing us to really feel disconnected. Human beings by design are wired for connection.
We are wired for connection, absolutely.
Especially man and woman. Especially man and woman.
Especially. And so while we have the book here, let's talk a bit about the book. The single biggest reasons why marriages break down. What would that be?
So going back to what we chatted about a few minutes ago, when a man feels insignificant to a woman, he retreats.
Right.
He does all those other things that aren't always so healthy, but he's trying to fill the void. So that's the biggest breakdown. The greatest need is significance. The breakdown is he retreats, which is rooted in fear, false evidence appearing real. You can forget everything and run or face everything and rise.
Right.
He forgets everything and runs because he doesn't feel important to her. There's one thing that sends a man to the moon, it's a woman. There's one thing that crushes a man, it's a woman.
Right.
So he retreats. And she doesn't like the retreat because then she feels insecure and abandonment. She's looking for that connection, that unity. She's really looking for unity because a man was to initiate unity. So when he's not initiating unity, something wrong with the design. And her fear sets in, but she doesn't handle it right either. She attacks him and rejects him. And the more she attacks and rejects, the more he retreats.
The more he retreats.
So
that's the self-fulfilling prophecy we were just talking about.
That's
right?
the greatest breakdown in every marriage. I've shared with Christians, Muslim, 82, 22, all over the world, all different types, and everyone has said that's the greatest need, that's the greatest breakdown, and we need to start to do the opposite.
So basically, it's just conditioning ourselves to do the opposite of what our initial response is, or what we think we should do.
Right.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep our promises.
That's a number one, right? Yeah, absolutely. So anything else that you would like to tell us about the book? Once again, everybody, the book is His and Hers Greatest Need. And it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, I have it on Amazon, or you can go to hisandhers.ca. That's H-I-Z or
Z
Z,
in the book, yeah.
H-E-R-Z. So hisandhers.ca. So you can get the ebook or the soft cover from my website, or you can go to Amazon as well.
So yeah, check that out. And also, there's a little story that is with this book that we shared earlier in the week when we were talking. Involves Dr. Gary Chapman.
Ah, yeah.
So I think if you would just share with the listeners that's a good story.
Well, and it's interesting, like you said, you look back and you can see how things were falling into place. We think our lives are falling apart, but really I think there's some divine intervention here because 2003 I wanted to write a book. Everything fell apart in 2008. And again in 12. And then I started writing my book in 13. And 4 years later, actually 3 years later when I was finishing my book, I was laid up in bed, kneecap separated from my quad, lost everything again. Relationship fell apart, and but God wanted me to finish this book. So I sent an email to Dr. Gary Chapman on August 16. And I was living with this widow lady in Strathmore.
And Gary Chapman's book, pardon me for interrupting, is the five love languages.
Right.
Probably you've heard of that. It's a very popular book.
The number one book probably across the globe that helps couples learn each other's love languages. So I got the decline. I sent him an email down in North Carolina, and his assistant said, sorry, busy, and I'm wiping my tears. And then May of next year, May 11th, I finally get 200 books printed. And I'm so excited. The next day, I'm in Chapters in Calgary doing a book signing. They asked me to come in for Mother's Day and do a book signing. So I sold some books. But 7 days, get it, lucky 7. 7's the number for completion. I got woken up from a nap in about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got told to go to First Alliance Church. I didn't go there, and I'm walking through the doors, another guy's walking in, we start talking, and he's a minister and all that kind of stuff, and we're walking some more, and then all these black tablecloths filled with Dr. Gary Chapman books. And I asked him what's going on. He said, well, Dr. Chapman's speaking here at a sold-out crowd of 1,800 people. And I'm going, no way. So I'm sitting in the cafeteria. It's a big church, and the church is empty. It's an hour and 15 minutes before he's speaking. People are starting to trickle in, and I phoned my mom. She had knee infection in Edmonton. I said, Mom, will you say a little prayer with me? So we're saying a little prayer. Another friend phoned me, and 10 minutes later, 10 steps away, he walked right by me. And I got to give
the man himself.
Yeah, the man himself. So I guess I think that he needed to actually get my book handed to him, meet me in person. He was going back that night on the flight. What else is he going to do?
He's got all the time in the world to read your book.
A week later, I sent a thank you, and a week after that, I get a reply back from his assistant. I didn't see it for 2 more months, and next thing you know, I have an endorsement on the back of my book. So, yeah.
What a story. What an amazing story that is. Hey, we call those God shots here, but yeah, there it is. You know, he highly recommends it from Gary Chapman himself. And you know, when you think of all the series of events that had to take place and all get woven together for that to happen, that's a great story.
Well, I honestly think God's heart is very sad that the breakdown of husband and wife and every other problem in our world, whether it's abortion or prostitution or racism, it all stems from the breakdown of that greatest team. Right. And if we can fix the marriage, and we knew that God is love, and we really put love first, we could really start to put the world back together. And even if we don't put it all back together, we can do our part in helping people realize what that love's really about.
Right. Nice. And you know, if we could I just want to get back to the 2 greatest needs again, once again.
So the greatest,
just to remind everybody, because you know, I think so often in today's world, or I think people don't even know what their place is anymore. And I don't mean that people should, women should have her place here and a man should have her place here, but I mean, I think as we've evolved, people don't even know anymore. Men don't know if they should open the door anymore for a woman. They don't know.
Well, the emasculation of men is really happening, and they don't feel like they have a purpose. So the greatest need for a man is significance, and the greatest need for a woman is security. Now, ultimately, we need to find it in God, because the man and woman are going to screw it up.
Right.
But we still need to meet each other's need for security and significance. And I share with men, the greatest way you love your wife, you stay, not retreat, and you never quit loving her. Right. And the greatest way for a wife to love her husband is she believes in him. Even if she don't want to always believe in him, her love is so powerful. So it's a little bit different. I have a little poem that I like to share. Woman was made from man and for man, not from his feet or his head to be beneath or above, but from his side to walk alongside. Under his arm to be protected, near his heart to be loved. Where he is weak, she is strong. Where she is weak, he is strong. Husband and wife are completers, not competers. They're the greatest team between 2 human beings. And when God is at the top and the center of their lives, they will know how to love one another, their family, their community, their world.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Brent. So, wow, well, I think our time is up. Wow, I know I personally have learned a lot of really, really interesting insight today. Once again, everybody, the book is His and Hers Greatest Need by Brent Taylor, and you can get that on Amazon as well as hisandhers.ca.
Right.
Right.
Awesome.
Brent, thank you so much for coming down today.
Thank you.
And for all the information. We got some unity going on here today, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have yourself a great week, and don't forget to stay safe and sane. We'll see you next